The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts, ownership, or management. And now, on with the show. This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
And we're back for episode number 3 with Paul Chadwick here from the Westgate Resort, Las Vegas, and in Elvis Presley's dressing room. Many original parts and pieces in this room too, so thank you everybody for letting us do this in this room and being a part of this. And Paul, we left off, you were at Tournament of Kings, running through the dirt, dragging carpet. A lot of fun, huh?
Yeah, that was rough. That was rough.
Rough gig, yeah. So we'll move on to, and you were there for how long at Tournament of Kings?
Oh God, I mean, I've never really left. I've had a couple full-time jobs with them. The first full-time gig with them was when Pete retired, and they asked me to take over. And then I left and got enticed by all the new equipment came here. When I left the Cirque show and went on the bounce, they brought me in a lot, took advantage of my free time. And at some point, they hired me back in. And then the head electric, who actually was the guy who took over from me when I left, he took a leave of absence. So they asked me to step into that role again. And I was, at that point, I was full-time. When he came back, I took advantage of his return and started reconnecting and doing a lot more of my outside work. And they called me in and said, well, you either need to be part-time or full-time, so which is it? So I took the part-time end of things and did a lot of overseas stuff during that time. That was kind of like the start of it. Did a lot of installation work. I was one of the project managers for the systems integration at the ARIA when it was initially built as a performance space for a Cirque show, the Elvis show. Speaking of that, so I did a lot of that kind of bounce work.
Let me ask you this. Somewhere in there, you had plenty of time to go work for Illumifax / Advanced Entertainment and do all that. What years was that you were fitting all? You always were. You were 24 hours a day. You were working somewhere. I don't know how you did it, but you did it. So
I was with Illumifax up to the point that as the operations director for them, up to the point where Mark Fetto came to me and said, "I can get you off of these 2 jobs." And I was working here at that point full time, and I was working as operations director for Illumifax full time. And so I took advantage of his offer, and that's when I officially left Illumifax. Some years later, Don retired. The owner retired and sold the assets of the company, the inventory and everything else. The business essentially closed. That was the end of it. The end of Illumifax at that time. When he retired. The assets, the inventory, and everything else, he sold to his son, Matt, who was running Advanced Entertainment Services, which was a special effects company. I have never stopped working for Advanced Entertainment. From Illumifax morphed into, working for Advanced Entertainment. And I still do a lot of work with them.
okay, good deal.
Next week, as a matter of fact, I'll be flying down and spending a week in Miami for Advanced Entertainment.
Nice. Well, you've done really well at working for these places, and then keep being able to go back and work with them when they need a hand, and that says a lot about the skill set that they want to, that you have, and that they want to grab you whenever they can. It also says that Paul, you've not really stayed anywhere a long, long time.
Well,
which is understandable because you get to a certain point, it's like I don't know if I can keep going on this job this long.
I was with Splash for about 15 years, and I was probably with Illumifax almost the same kind of time, as about 15 years or so, before I officially resigned the full-time position and went to work for Feddo. That would have been I started with Illumifex back in the mid-'90s, and I ended up, leaving somewhere around, so maybe it was only 10 years, is when I resigned from Illumifex, but my association with Advanced Entertainment continues.
Yeah, we used to rent the equipment from you to do that live nativity every year at the church.
Yeah, I remember that. Sure enough,
that was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did some. I don't know if you remember the boxing that we did here.
Yeah,
on stage, did some of that too.
Yeah, you guys rented a lot of that stuff, and yeah, over the years we've worked different. We've rented stuff from you, and you've always been a good resource to get stuff from, and a good sounding board on even people. Because I think Mark Brodling worked here on your recommendation as you were leaving.
He was one of the names, and Todd was also. I gave you Todd's name. Todd and Sean Finnegan.
Yeah, I think Mark was one of the guys. I think Tony liked Mark because he's a little bit younger.
Yeah, Tony liked him,
and a little bit more go-getter. Or I don't know what exactly it was, but they seem to get along really well. Tony's supposed to come and do this podcast here.
Oh yeah, how's he doing?
He's doing great. His mom is not doing so well. That's why. He can't. He keeps on making plans to come back to Vegas and visit, and then we're supposed to, when he gets here, come in here and do this.
Nice.
He wants to do the podcast, but it's like he's busy taking care of his mom. She's like 90-something years old, 95, or
I'm sure
she's way up there too. And,
but
so that time will come. Let me look at this just real quick because I can't remember. We've been talking 5 minutes, so 50. Okay. Had to look at the old timer, make sure I don't go over on these things. This console likes about 30 minutes of recording at a time, then it wants to stop, and then you can do it again. You start going past it, it starts glitching and starts breaking your podcast into things, and it's like.
All right,
that's why. But I like 30 minutes basically at the most, 25 to 30 minutes. So, anyways, enough about this console. Okay, so so you finally did Illumifax, and you went over to Mark Feddo's place. Very Lights. Yeah. Is there Very Lights around anymore, really? Are they still doing stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. There's no more Verilight Production Services. They sold that. Rusty Bruschke, who was the head of Verilight, CEO, chairman of the board, or whatever, sold the company, the Verilight Production Services organization that Feddo used to head up here in Vegas, sold that to PRG. He kept the manufacturing end of Verilight. And now that's been subsumed by a holding company. I think their name is Signify or something like that. They own or are a holding company for Verilight and Strand.
Okay. Interesting combination.
Strand's kind of going away.
Yeah. Not a whole lot of fixed lighting stuff going on out there anymore.
No, but there's still a ton of Strand Dimerex in this town. There's a ton.
I think this place still has, 1,000+ lights that are conventional,
Yeah. It's a huge
and
market.
it's going to keep going until they run out of par 64 bulbs, basically. At that point, then it's done. Start taking fixtures down at that point. So.
Yep, either that or getting back caps that are LED.
And that's the game plan. Would be like just getting a whole bunch of LEDs and put up there. And you can be whatever color you want it to be.
Right.
Instead of 4 or 5 color wash, and however many color wash you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
A million color wash. Yeah. No, that's interesting. It's interesting to see the rise and the dominance and then the decline and end of a product. You know, Very Light was the king. You know, in the '80s, early '80s, mid '80s, whatever.
Well, they were the first.
Yeah, and then they were pretty big through the '90s, and all of a sudden everybody started jumping in on the market. You know, I remember Morpheus. What's the one that had the big box and had the mirror that just moved?
Well, there were a lot of mirrored fixtures out there. High end had ones that were pretty popular with the old I-beam and then the
I-beam,
Cyberlight.
that's the one. Yeah, I-beam was one I remember.
But I mean, there's a ton of lighting companies out there, and some of them are pretty old. Morpheus is just as old, if not older, than Verilight as a company. And I said that Verilight was first. They were actually the first that popularized the moving light, but the Panabeam, which was a Morpheus fixture, predates Verilight's VL1.
Oh, does it really?
Yes,
Okay.
it did.
Well, I just learned something.
Yeah, you won't find too many Panabeams left around now, though.
Or VL1s.
Or VL1s, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Although, interestingly enough, speaking of old VL1s, the VL rig that we had at Splash, VL6s and VL5s, which was their Series 300. So they went VL1, VL2, VL4, and then their next upgrade went into a little bit more digital, and where they incorporated the capability of being able to use somebody else's console rather than the VL console, which you had to use before. But in any case, we had that at Splash. We had with Splash 2, they brought in a bunch of Series 300 Verilight fixtures. So now we're talking, well, we've already said it was in 94, end of 94, 95. So that's how old these lights were. Of course, then the Riviera got tore down. The lights were still there. I got a text from Don saying, hey, there's a guy who has a bunch of Verilights, old Verilights that he's wanting to sell, and the buyer wants to know about a profile for these lights. Can you help him out? So I got up with Don Toto, and I said, what lights are we talking about? He bought some stuff from the Riviera. I said, oh my God, that was my rig at the Riviera. That's the rig that I maintained for 15 years or however long it was. So I thought that was funny. So he purchased that. All that stuff goes for auction, right? So he purchased it from the Riviera when the Riviera was imploded, and I don't know if he used it or not, but he was selling it to some circus, and whoever did the lighting for the circus was asking questions about old VL6s and that. It was kind of funny how it goes around, but some of that stuff's been around for a long time.
Long time, yeah, because I think the VL1s came into a Splash in, I think it was 89.
Yeah, probably 90, yeah, something like that.
Was it right in there? Because I started in 88, and it seems to me within a year or so they brought in the Very Light package, and the first rental to rent to own, whatever they want to call it.
There wasn't any owning back then with them.
Yeah.
But it was all
the contract was they had to show it like a rent own where you're renting it, but you're however they were, whatever word magic they used on getting it in there.
Right.
So way back when.
I got a call years ago from the guy that took over from Mark. He was running the Las Vegas and Las Vegas side of the Verilight business towards the end of that business. He called me up. He's a good friend of mine. He called me up and he said, Paul, we just got this console from the Riviera. They gave it back to us because, we essentially owned it. And it was my old console that I used to run the shows off of. And he said, do you want it? I said, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah, really. Which was it, an Artisan or something?
It was the Mini Artisan.
Mini Artisan, okay.
It was how we ran the show off the Mini Artisan. It got programmed on the Artisan, but then they left the Mini to run the show. Yeah. I could do some programming on the Mini as well. But yeah, so we ran the show off that Mini Artisan, and he'd gotten it back, and they were destroying all the old consoles because they were out of date and they weren't being made, or that whole series and that whole thing was end of life.
Yep.
For a long time. So their instructions from Verilife, from their corporate office, were to destroy them because they didn't want, somebody to grab it and have the thing be out on the market and give them a bad name when it failed or whatever.
Yeah.
So so he called me and asked me if I wanted it. I should have probably kept it as a souvenir, but
Or call Chris Nyfield and say, "Do you want this?" Or,
right.
or Joe Lavatier, one of those guys. Yeah, that's a old lighting consoles. I know guys that collect old sound consoles. Being an audio guy myself, I'm always saying, "Do you guys have such and such console? Because I'd really like just to have one of them,
Right.
just to say I have one of them." So I got feelers out looking for some old consoles. Probably buy them for $500 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
They were state of the art 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Cool. So after Morpheus, and where'd you head to there after that?
The nightmare that was Chris Angel at the Luxor.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
yeah.
God. The guy's got, I tell you what, though, he does have a following.
Chris Angel does. It's a TV following.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand that it's a TV. See, that's a lot of people don't understand. Just because you see somebody on TV doesn't mean it's the same thing live.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like Reba McEntire. People expect to see Reba do a comedy. That love her TV show. Think when they come see her, she's going to do some kind of No, she does songs.
Yeah, she's a singer.
She's a singer. She does concerts. She tells jokes during it and stuff like that, during her show and stuff. But no, she's a singer, and they don't really cross over. The TV people that love the show and they don't cross pollinate that much. I don't think, And I had some dispute on that with somebody here at this hotel when Reba was on tour, and they were going to pay her unbelievable, one of the nicest people on the planet, but still. She hadn't done any touring, any albums, hadn't done anything in a lot of years. But her TV show was like the biggest thing on, on the networks. And they're like, "Oh, well, we're going to have to pay her a whole bunch to do that." And I'm like, "I don't think so. I think you should pay her a whole lot less because, she's got a lot of followers out there, but she hasn't done anything new in a long time, in 6 years since she's been doing the show."
Mm-hmm.
And they paid her an unbelievable amount of money, and they didn't get anybody to come see the show. And I'm like, well, that's why I was telling you don't do that. Yeah, but her show's number one. No, that's a TV crowd.
Yeah, right.
That's the TV people. That's not the.
Right.
They're different people. They're different people. You have to go. They're different people. So, yeah. So, he would have a different show. Yeah, his TV thing was interesting, but. Not to give anything away, you're allowed to stage things and stuff on the TV. It's a little harder on a live show to stage everything just perfectly.
Yeah. Well, it was more him. I mean, he's just not. Maybe he's changed. I haven't seen that show since then. But so that was a long time ago. But and it was the first stage show I think that he had put into place, and Cirque partnered up with him. But they had never done a show with a name like him either. So on their side, they were as inexperienced as he was doing a live performance that wasn't on TV. He's just not. He's not a very charismatic person on stage. I'm sure that he is on television, but not on the stage.
Yeah.
But still, in all, I mean, he has enough followers to where those people are getting audience numbers that are up in the 80s and 90s, percentage-wise. So they were anyway doing very well, and it was a hellacious time for me because it was just sweating through the opening and through all the rehearsals, and it was very difficult, and I was really glad to be out of there.
Long days, and we'll talk about some of that
days.
too. But nobody realizes the long days, just what a long day means.
Yeah, very long days. 7 or 6 in the morning to 2 in the morning the next day.
Yeah. You try to get 4 hours. Yeah, no, it's when we loaded in Manilow in 2004, it was 3 months, and I started off with 12-hour days for everybody.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And everybody's like, shouldn't we do them in longer days? I go, the long days are going to come when we get into rehearsals. Those are going to be the long days. right now, I don't want anyone burning out in the first couple
right.
of weeks.
12 is
basically.
long enough.
Yeah. Said work 4, take a half. Work 4, take a half. Work 4, go home. You know, and go get that lets you go get 8 hours at least. If you go home and you do it right, you go home get 8 hours. You can come back
Right.
and you're doing pretty good. You can do that. But that was 7 days a week. And as I told everybody, if you're tired and you need a day off, take a day off. Don't push it. You know.
You just make mistakes when you're tired.
Yeah, but I was here because Don Toto had the lake crew, the electric and all that was on it, and I had partial rigging crew on the nighttime. Carpenters, riggers, and everything else came in 7 in the morning, went till 8 o'clock at night. So I was here at 6 o'clock in the morning, watching what Don and everybody had done to get everyone started at 7. Then I stayed an hour late, so I was here till 9. So I never left for 3 months. It was great though. I'll do it again. It's the stuff I love doing. So long hours. Your wallet gets fat, but you
don't have any way to spend it.
Yeah, you just walk out of there tired. Get paid for a Hawaii trip, a really fun Hawaii trip, you know. And the wife and the kids and that. So that was all worth it. And where do we go from here? Where did you go from there?
Bounced.
After Chris Angel.
That's when I started bouncing. Just picking up work where I could. Kept pretty busy.
Did you do more convention or did you do showrooms? You know, just hop from showroom to showroom, or a little mix mash?
Pretty much a mismatch of everything. Got that job through PRG doing the ARIA gig, so that was a good 6-month interesting gig. But I did a lot of cruise ship work over the course of that. I did a stint, it was about 6 years. And at that time it started prior to getting another full-time gig with bass, the Rock of Ages gig. I started prior to that and continued on while I had it. So I would take time off from rock or time off from Magic Mike or whatever and go out on the sea. But I started off doing installs, mostly effects installs, working for Advanced Entertainment. And the first one I did, I was on my own, so that was kind of interesting. I remember that Matt asked me to do it, and I said, okay, well, you're going to have to tell me exactly what it is that I'm doing. Give me the specifics of the job. And it was in Italy. Where did we go in Italy? It was there's a shipyard just outside of Venice, and we were in that shipyard. And in those, you stay on the ship. So I should have known when it started off this way. I was doing a corporate gig for somebody, and it was at Mandalay. And Matt said, "Well, I have a little bit of time. You want to do lunch?" And I said, "Yeah, I can take a lunch. They'll give me a lunch break." So we went down and met in the food court at the event center in Mandalay. And he had just gotten, that was when iPads just came out, and he'd just gotten a new iPad, so he didn't really know exactly how to work it, and he didn't have access to all the right software and files yet because it was brand new. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to show me plans and checklists and, you know, everything else for what he wanted me to do on this iPad. And it was primarily a bit of a disaster. And I should have known that, you know, I'm going to be going over to a foreign country, and I don't really know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So I had my my PC with me, and I'd taken some books, and you know, got on the plane, and all was well. Got on board the ship, got my cabin, because you live on the ship in a guest cabin, and it's in dry dock, so it's floating, but it's still in the dry dock, so there's no passengers or anything. You eat on the ship, you live on the ship, and you work on the ship. So I'm on the ship, I get up, and I always checked my emails in the morning to, you know, send or read anything coming from the office. And I got up one morning shortly after I had gotten there. I'd been there maybe 1 or 2 days. And I got up one morning and I got the blue screen of death on my machine. And there wasn't anything I can do. And I walked around, I asked anybody who had a boot disk, and nobody had a Windows boot disk that they could give me to lend me. So I ended up, there was a production electrician on board who, she was contract, but they would bring her in pretty much to oversee the installation of the lighting systems. And we worked together a bit because obviously when you're dealing with effects, there's a lot of interface that happens with the electrical side of the house. So she would let me borrow her computer so I could at the very least check my emails. But the downside for me, besides that, was that I ran out of books very quickly. And the only thing I could find was things that were written in Italian, and I couldn't read Italian. And anything that was on TV was Italian, and I didn't understand Italian. So it was a very long, boring 2.5, 3 weeks that I was in Italy. And I got home and got rid of that computer.
You didn't get to get off the ship to go see sites?
Oh, no. We could get off the
Okay,
ship.
well,
Matter of fact, I had to because they didn't send me some critical. They didn't send me a hole saw. I remember it was a hole saw that I needed a hole saw to drill some holes into the deck to put my pyro devices in. And they didn't send me a hole saw. They sent me the drill, but not the hole saw. So I had to go out into town. So you'd leave the shipyard, and you could take a bus into town. It was all of about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. We were like halfway between town and Venice. So it was 10 minutes one way and 10 minutes the other. So I drove to the town, the little town of Mestre. I drove in and got the bus in and got off. And by the time I got there, it was pretty much siesta time. I didn't realize they took siestas in Italy at that point. I'd never been to Italy before, but they do. So it was siesta time, so there wasn't anything I could do. I had been given directions from one of the guys on the ship that I was working with about where there was a hardware store I could check out. And this was in the days prior to Google Maps and things like that. We didn't have any of that stuff. At least I didn't have it overseas. So I found a cafe that was still open, had a cup of coffee, and hung out for a couple hours, and then walked around to this hardware store. And I got there just as this older, tiny lady was unlocking. She was clearly the person who was going to be running the store for the rest of the day. She didn't speak any English. I didn't speak any Italian. There were no hole saws on display. While they had a lot of stuff in that hardware store, a little mom and pop hardware store, there was no hole saws on display. So here I am trying to explain to somebody who doesn't understand English without the use of Google Translator what I'm looking for, a hole saw that had to be the right size. So a lot of hand gesticulation and a lot of finding a piece of paper and drawing crude pictures and things like that, and then finally getting the right size. It took a good hour between me and fortunately she was very patient and very good humored. But it was an interesting communication dilemma that I had. But quite interesting. But that was my first experience over there, and that was the first ship that I did. Then after that, there was a lot of different installs that I did, dry dock installs. Probably the worst one that I had to do was, and I did a bunch of flame proofing of stage drapery and things like that for Holland America. And that was the worst dry dock. They had the brilliant idea. I did it while the ship was in service generally. So I would go in after the show at night and spend the night and vacuum and flame proof the drapery. Yeah. This happened to be a dry dock, and the guy who was the Holland America coordinator for me, for our contract, he was like, "This will be perfect, Paul. You can work during the day, you can do whatever, it'll be wide open." Well, I couldn't because everybody else was working during the day, and it was a mess. There was dust and everything all over the place. So going in had to be done at night, but getting there, landed at the airport, got a cab to the shipyard. They dropped me off. I walk into the shipyard. I've got to look for there wasn't anybody to say, to point out where the ship was and to say, go over here. So I finally, after dragging my suitcase behind me, which had my clothes and tools and everything else I might need, dragging my big suitcase behind me over rock and gravel and everything else, finally found the ship. The access to the ship, because it was literally in dry dock, so that meant it wasn't in the water. So your access was on deck level 3 on that ship, I believe, but you had to climb this big, huge green ramp that you were climbing up somewhere around 70 to 75 feet in order to get to the deck. And I'm dragging this luggage behind me, bumpity bump up there. It took me a good 15, 20 minutes to get the darn thing up there and finally get into the cabin. So in that one play, plus in the Freeport dry dock, there's nothing around. If you want to go out and have a bite to eat or go out for a drink or tour around, you're finding a bus or getting a cab or something from the dry dock to take you the half hour into town. So between that and the 75-foot climb to get back into the ship, I didn't leave.
Yeah, I just stay there.
Yeah, I just stayed there.
Well, cool. That brings us to just about the end on this episode. When we come back, let's talk about, just real quick, about some of the Rock of Ages work you did over there. And let's go to Magic Mike and what it took to light that show.
Okay, sounds
that
good.
That one's, when you told me about that, I was like, that's got to be in this interview. That's just ridiculous what it took to make that show get lit and get ready to go. So until then, Mr. Talbot, take it away.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.